Good morning, everybody. Today is the day that I'm going to start really showing in detail how we're going to cast form these walls up here. It's going to be a refresh up for everyone of how I cast form this entire 4-story house right here with up to a 6-level roof deck. Everybody, so I want to show you an example of how we're planning to try to form this cast form on these walls on this. Here we don't have a lot of the materials that's available in the US for cast forming, and even in the US those materials are expensive. There's different tie rods, as they call them, snap rods that you would either cut off in the cement or you would break off in the cement. But let me give you an example of what we're trying to do, and then maybe you'll also understand when I'm talking about a cast rod. So I'm going to start out. The walls are going to be formed inside outside with this plywood right here. This plywood has a poly film on it, and this is supposed to be able to be used again and again for forming on cement like that, because this poly film allows it to peel loose clean from the cement without sticking. It's a newer product that showed up here in the Philippines. It may be available in the US. I haven't seen it yet. I'm sure it's probably a specially ordered material. You're going to have these two pieces here. What we'll do is, these are just example pieces, inside wall, outside wall. You're going to line up and drill a hole all the way through. Then what I'm going to improvise with is this all thread. And here in the Philippines they call it full thread, and then there's another name that's in their local language that they call it also. But it's a piece of all thread. That will go in between the two layers here. But now you need something to keep your spread on your wall. Let me see if I can hold this. So say for instance we're going to pour it 4 inches thick. We got to have something to keep that spread. You know, you want to stay perfect. So the solution for that is going to be this. We're going to cut a piece of PVC pipe. This is 1/2 inch PVC. We're going to cut a piece of PVC pipe, and we're going to put it in between. I don't have a hole drilled in these right now, but I'm going to hold it up here as an example, and maybe you can understand. It'll have this in between there. Once the holes are drilled in this, this will be in between there, and this will be your set spread right there. Now you see there's a nut on this end and a nut on this end. What we'll do is, right here where my finger is, will be a piece of 2x2 lumber. On the inside where my thumb is over here, a piece of 2x2 lumber that will be running down the back like a rib to support this plywood even more, to keep it from bowing. Then this all thread, full thread, will go through both of those pieces. The 2x2 have large flat washers here on each side. You have a locked in place wall that should be able to hold a lot of PSI pressure when you're pouring that cement, and you should come out with a nice, good, smooth, flat wall if you'll put enough of these ribs of your 2x2 on the back side of it. So that is how we're planning to cast it. I'm going to pour this the way they do ICFs, insulated concrete forms, the foam forms that they do there in the US and throughout Europe, a lot of places in the world now. What they'll do is they'll put those foam forms, but you don't want to put too much PSI pressure and have a blowout on that as well. So what they do is they'll form it up, and they'll start pouring, and they'll pour just a couple of feet around in the bottom. It'll start kind of firming up and setting a little bit, and then they'll come around, they'll pour up a little bit more, steps it up a little higher, it starts firming a little bit, and they pour it, and they just keep bringing that pour up, 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 and the bottom has already firmed up, and then you don't end up with so much PSI pressure, so much load for a blowout on that. And also you don't have to have near as much support and bracing on it at that point too. So that's another thing. If you just form it all the way up 8 foot, 10 foot, whatever you're going, and you just pour a whole bunch of wetcrete in there, you have a huge hydraulic load inside of there, and it's going to take a lot of bracing. It's going to take a lot more of this material to hold that load to keep from having a blowout. And if a blowout means it buckled or pushed the form out somewhere, and the concrete has passed through and dumped out, and it may even stop, and then you're going to have a misformed wall It's going to be ugly. It's going to take a lot of repair to fix it, and a lot of work. All right, well, that's my lesson on that today of what we're going to be doing, and I'll talk to you guys on the next video. So I promised that I would do a little bit more detail on these videos and keep out any of the personal rhetoric and things going on around here, what we're cooking and what we're catching at the beach, and we'll stick straight on to how out here in the islands in the Philippines, just out here in the province, how I'm cast forming these walls without all the fancy little gadgets and clips and all this stuff that you would normally get in the West. That's possibly available here, but only usually to the big commercial builds, okay? And how you can do it economically with the stuff that's available here. So let's start this, and I'm going to show you step by step over the next few days, maybe a couple of weeks, how we're doing all of this work here. And for you that are not familiar with it, I'll show you a wall here, a couple of them, that this is part of our cast forming here. No hollow block, no putting that brick haydock they call hollow block here in the Philippines, that's made real cheap with very little concrete and tends to crumble really easy. None of that. These are solid cast concrete. And let me show you a wall right here and how perfect it can come out if you just take your time and do some basic steps. Nothing difficult, super easy. Heck, I can just go ahead and pull the first form off. I'm so excited to see what this looks like. Nice, smooth, and shiny. This is where the game changes on my build versus other builds. You see that wall right there? There's no coming back and having to plaster that with a layer of cement inside and outside, pulling all those nylons, you know, throwing inch and a half, 2 inches of cement plaster all on that and trying to form a window opening by hand and it getting out of square, out of level. Man, there it is right there. You see that? It just looks white, doesn't it? But that is a nice, clean, smooth wall. And I'll get back over here and show you when we peel the form. This is how good it is. There's nothing to see, right? It's just so smooth, there's nothing to see. Back this way also. You see here? Just cast. Let's go inside this room. Same thing. These walls are textured with an orange peel, but this is just how I cast them right here. Peel the plywood. There was no having to dress it up or anything. No chiseling in later. I'll be showing that when we set our electrical, we set the box on the back of our form. We put the conduit in. We get it all tied down. I'll be showing each one of those steps. And when we pull the plywood, the box is there ready. Sometimes we'll even put the wire already in the conduit, and we can literally pull the plywood and be ready to tie up a circuit and be ready to prime and texture, you know, do a little touch up on the wall. Very little touch up, very little, and have a nice clean wall like this. This is not having to come back and render it or nothing. This is just the way it was when the forms was pulled. Now, these have already been here for a couple of years now, and they were poured in sections. So we poured up 4 foot, then we poured up the next 4 foot, and then we had the beam up there, which is protruding down about 1 foot. So as you see, at the 4 foot, there is no like crack showing up in the wall where it joined or anything like that. Yeah, it is all clean and good. all the way around. This is all cast form. Just peel the form. The plumbing's already in, the electrical's already in. Even the breaker box up there, we went ahead and cast the box into the wall when we did it. And I'm gonna show each step how you can do that and not have a mistake. And this window openings, they are cast perfect for the windows. So you wanna buy your windows or your doors in advance if you're gonna buy factory mades, so you get those exact dimensions. And this is quick and easy. The electrical boxes in the ceiling, all the conduit, everything there is already pre-done, and right down to the switches. And that is just the way we peeled the ceiling too. Nice and clean. Electrical is already all in it. And we cast form all of this. Even this little wall sticking out right here, that is cast form. And then we have a local neighbor right here next to us that does the precast moldings for me right here. So as I mentioned, you probably want to go ahead and pre-purchase your doors and your windows so you have the exact opening size. So we have pre-purchased these. They've been here stored. Not only is it labeled with the dimensions, but we actually peel back and we get the true, make sure it's correct dimension, because we're going to cast this opening perfect, ready to slide this door in, screw it and seal it in place, and it's ready to go right when we peel our forms. Down here right now on the ground, Joel is building what we call a door buck. Hey, so this is the opening right here that's going to be cast for those glass doors I just showed you. And you can go ahead, Joel, that little hammer is not going to bother us none. And this is a door buck right here. You have a window buck and a door buck. So basically you're mocking up the exact dimensions for that window or door, and you're going to insert this, and then you're going to do your forming around it, and you're going to cast an opening. And when you peel this back out, not only can we reuse this over to the next door opening, there'll be 3 door openings up here, but we're ready to install our door. So you want it strong in the sides. You want it strong, like these are the sides here. You want it strong, so you want lumber going across really strong. You see he's doubling it up down in here, so that your sides don't push in from the load on the concrete. We inserted a 1/4 inch piece of plywood on here. Then that is to give us strength against it wanting to rock left and right, and you know, it hold it being square when we are installing it and pull it out. Because just lumber alone or a few little braces, it might get off. So a cheap ordinary piece of 1/4 inch plywood, which in the US they'll call like Luan, like an underlayment that we have right there. And then Joel gave this a 1/4 inch allowance on the width, right? It's oversized, 1/4 inch, in case we do have to tweak the door just a little bit. And it's also oversized, what, a 1/2 inch up and down, right? Yeah, an extra 1/2 inch allowance. So if anything happens and we need to adjust the door top to bottom with the track, something got a little off or anything, we have some allowance. The doors come with some plastic shims, some wedges that will fill that, and then when that little tiny bit, we'll fill it or caulk it in, and you'll never know it's there. But we do put a little allowance. But the main thing is to make sure your door openings are, this buck is nice and square. So he'll pull a tape from this corner to that corner, and that corner to that corner, and those measurements should be identical, as long as your width at your bottom and your width at the top and your height is exactly the same on both sides. If they're identical, then when you cross pull this measurement, that measurement should be identical, and you know you're square. And so he's preparing the door buck right now, and we will cast an opening. The following day we'll move over, use this again, cast the next opening, and so on. So that's what's happening on that. So our walls are 4 inches thick. So this is 4 inches thick. You're gonna make a 6-inch wall, make a 6-inch butt, of course. So the industry standard out there is 4 inches. The windows and doors are built to fit in a 4-inch thick wall. 3 inches is just not really any good if you're just trying to be cheap. 3 inches is not good because by the time you put the steel in between the forms and work the concrete down and all, it's just not much space in between there. If you got a piece of 10 mm or say a 1/2 inch steel, and by the time you put those crisscrossing each other, you've got almost an inch taken up right there and material dropping down. It gets really tight and you'd have to use really tiny aggregate. 4 inch, that's the magic number or up. And for general construction, you don't need anything thicker than 4 inch. And over here, we've been preparing our spacers that's gonna go in between the walls. And I can show you over here a wall that we've already cast, what these will be doing. So these are some cast form walls right here that we pour for down here in this kitchen. And as you see, there's a hole here. Now yesterday they took a hammer and went through and tapped these tubes out. You see that right there? Goes through. And this is pretty common in cast form to have these holes like this. So in our plywood, I'll show you in a minute, we're drilling out a perfect series of holes through our sheets that we can reuse that same piece again really quick and cast it. And you see we got these holes right here. Now this is so your through bolt, which is going to be here in this country called full thread. In the US we call it all thread. We have them cut to 1 foot strips with nuts and washers on each side, and we'll have lumber, which is going to be called your cribbing, on the outside of your plywood. But this is very crucial that these are cut exactly 4 inches because these are spacers between the plywood. Now, critical tip, and I'm going to cover this again in this series of videos. When you tighten down those bolts, you only want to barely snug them. I mean barely. You don't want to put any cranking it down or anything, because what you're going to do on the back side of the plywood is this is going to cut down into the sheet. You're tightening a nut out here, and if they crank it down, it's becoming just like a die cutter then. The end of this is going to be cutting into the plywood. Your wall is going to be less than 4 inches, and you're going to have a mess because this sandwiched into your plywood. You only want to snug it, and I mean just snug it. You could literally do it by finger tightening. And then when the concrete gets in there, it's going to press out tight. It's not about you're trying to crank in on the concrete. All you're doing is getting it to a measurement that it can hold. You could literally finger tighten them if you had good clean bolts, or just wrench, but do not tighten them in. Now, that was one problem I had just a couple times in the past, and I had to show the guys the mistake they made. If you do that, you're going to end up with a wavy wall too, because maybe this wall ended up 3.5 here and ended up 4 somewhere else. And when you pulled the form, this was bit into the back of your wood. So just snug them. Now we'll continue on to another spot. So it's a piece of plywood up here that I'm setting up right now for our template to drill our holes. So start out with a pencil. I went to a chalk where I could see it better on this. But I have laid out a grid on this first sheet, and then it's going to be your jig, your template to drill the rest of your sheets. So I come in 6 inches from the top and bottom, 6 inches from the end, and being that this is a 4 foot sheet, this 6 and this 6 equals a foot. So now I have a foot increment in between. So that'll give me 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces of lumber going across it, and nice even pattern. You don't want to just start a foot in right here, because that leaves this weak at the top that the concrete could flute it out, flare it out at the top. So you want to stay up. By the time you add your piece of 2x2 lumber on right here, well, now you're only down to like 5 inches left right there, and that's plenty strong enough to hold that. So this is how we're doing it on there, and then we'll take this and drill the other sheets. Now I asked him to only set this on top and only drill a few at a time, because what will happen is if they're drilling a whole stack of sheets, that bit, as it's going down through them, if they're not straight up here perfect with that drill bit, it'll start walking off, and maybe down your last sheet the hole might be a 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch off from their top hole, and then you got an issue. So then going the other way, I haven't done it yet, but I'm just beginning here. I'm going to come from this mark 6 inches in here, and I'm going to do 1 foot increments with bolts down through here. And that way, if I want to add lumber coming up on my cribbing, we use the same hole, and we have cribbing going 2 ways if we need to do that. So very simple. 6 inches in, 6 inches in, 1 foot all on the inside from there. And same thing, if this is an 8 foot sheet, you burn 6 off that end, you burn 6 off that end. The rest is still going to come out 1 foot increments in between. When we go through here, we're going to drill a hole. We'll probably drill the hole 1/2 inch. The bolts are 3/8. You don't want to make everything too tight. You don't want to drill a 3/8 hole for a 3/8 bolt, because once you start pouring on this wood may swell just a little bit, even though it's covered. This is formed plywood. It's got a poly skin on it just for peeling off of concrete. And this is readily available in the Philippines in many different brands. Dragonfly, all kinds of brands. They just put 10 million different names on it. Some of it's a little bit better than others, but you want that hole a little oversized. And the holes in your cribbing, you want a little oversized. You don't want to drill a 3/8 hole for a 3/8 bolt. It's going to be very tight getting the stuff back off. A little oversized. And then it's real easy to put together, pull off, no problem whatsoever. So we're going to get this marked and drilled out, and as we move forward to another step, I'll show you that. I will mention that on the 6 inches, and we'll be covering this multiple times in this video, I will mention that the 6 inches up, let's say if this was the bottom, down on the floor, you're going to have a piece of lumber down on the floor. We'll use a concrete nail that down, and we leave the head of the concrete nails up so they're easy to pull. It doesn't have to be mega secured, but you're going to have a piece right along the floor at the bottom holding this, and that piece is very important, and it's very important you get it straight. Pull a nylon line. We'll show all of it as this goes, and make sure you nail those very straight. This is easy work. Don't overthink it. It's easy work, but it just take discipline and time to lay out your grid perfect, to drill your sheets perfect, to prepare all of it, and then you'll have a really clean job when you start casting your walls. So they're getting these sheets all nice and even, and then the top one here's the template, so he's drilling it. Excuse the karaoke next door. There's a birthday party going on. Hello, hello. And these he's already drilled all the holes on. So he's going ahead and sticking some nails through those to hold them from sliding. So that way when you drill it, don't move it. We got clamps there too. You can just clamp it if you want. Clamp it nice and tight. But he'll drill those through. And then the next thing we're going to do is prepared to drill our cocoa lumber. And there's a little simple methods we learned after we started doing this down here before on the house. There was methods we learned how to work our overlaps and our corners and all. So we'll pick out our good straight long cocoa lumber, and we'll use this template again to drill some of those, but they're not going to be 8 foot. They're going to be longer, like I say, because they need to overlap to the next sheet. We don't want a joint of our lumber right where those sheets butt up to each other. So I'll be showing that here later on. We'll have to start preparing our steel next also. So we're starting to tie the steel up here. Excuse, I got a birthday party going on here next door, so it's all day karaoke. That's the life here. But if you hear really bad singing, that's the life here. But we're bringing up this door buck here right now. Slowly they are, and we're going to install it right here. We'll continue the steel over here, but we're getting all the steel tied in place, and we're chipping the concrete at the floor. They'll sweep that up. Might need to chip it a little bit more, but we're chipping the concrete right on the surface. And you see here we've chipped it all up too. We'll sweep all that up and vacuum it up so that we'll get a good bond of the wall right down on the floor there. Here, put your end down. Put your end down. Now rock it up. There you go. Yep. And we'll get it figured out here where it's going to go, and that'll be our door buck right there, right where a sliding patio door is going.